Hi there, and welcome back to the Average Person Advice Channel. I'm the Average Guy Nick, and today I want to talk a little bit about cooking basics. I think cooking is extremely important. It's an amazing skill to learn. It's going to help you save money versus eating out. It's going to help you cater to your own tastes. It's going to help you, maybe you're in a situation or a place in your life where there isn't many takeout options, or maybe you want to go on a very specific type of diet at some point in your life where you need to for your health. And because of that, it really limits your options if, depending on where you are, right? So being able to cook is an extremely important skill, an extremely versatile skill, and it's a skill that I think pretty much everyone should at least know the basics of, so that, if you have to prepare something for yourself quickly or whatever, you can. And if you enjoy it and you really like the food you make, like I personally do, then you can put more time and energy into it and make some really really wonderful meals. So I'm going to take it over to the kitchen now, and I'm going to show you some of the tools I use and some of the basic techniques, and we'll talk a little bit about preparation and how to pick out a recipe and everything, and yeah, we'll go from there. So here's some of the basic tools that you'll need when you first want to start cooking. And you don't have to get these ones specifically, but you want something similar that's going to allow you to actually prepare your food and get it ready to cook. So one of the first things is a knife set, or at least a good knife. Now this is a knife set that I got a long time ago, and they're worth the investment because they last a very, very long time. So this is Henkel's knife set, but you can pretty much get, there's so many good brands now out there that you can get. But what you want to invest in ideally is a full set, which usually comes with three different sizes. So you have your bigger knife, which really can be used for pretty much everything once you sort of learn how to use it. It's my favorite, the one I usually go to. And you have your medium-sized knife, which is better for certain applications. And then of course your smaller knife as well. If you can only get one of the three, or if you're just going to buy one individually, I would suggest you go with the bigger knife, as that's going to give you more versatility in your cooking. Now, if you're first buying the knives, they'll be sharp. After though you use them a bit, you'll need to sharpen them, and there are different options and ways to do that, which I will talk about in a bit. So once you've acquired your knife or knife set, the next piece is you need something to cut on. Now, you can just cut on a plate or a countertop. The thing is, if you cut on a countertop, you're going to damage the countertop. If you cut on a plate, you're going to scratch up the plate, but you're also going to dull out your knives. So the best thing to do is to get yourself a cutting board. Now, generally, the standard or gold standard for cutting boards is a nice wood cutting board. Part of the reason for that is because the wood is a little bit softer, so it's not going to dull the knife quite the same way. Wood cutting boards tend to last a long time, and wood has like a natural antibacterial property to it, so it's a little bit better than plastic in that regard. But also too, when you cut into it, it doesn't break apart into pieces or get really bad like a plastic cutting board will. Now, with that said, if you start with a plastic cutting board or you use a plastic cutting board for certain things, that's fine. Use what you have. But if you can, get yourself a nice wood cutting board. So once you have your tools for preparation, the next thing is your tools for actually cooking. So of course, you need something to actually cook your food in, and depending on what you're going to prepare, there's different pots and pans and stuff that you can use. But as an initial purchase or investment, a nice sturdy stainless steel pan that has a thicker lip will serve you for a lot of things. I mean, you can boil water in this if you have to. Of course, you can just do frying, like cooking up eggs and stuff like that. It's generally a good multi-purpose pan. I also suggest for your first pan that you don't get rubber on it. Keep it completely stainless steel or cast iron. And the reason for that is because if you want to transfer the entire pan into the oven for certain recipes, like let's say you're making a frittata or something that requires both, with this pan, because of the rubber, you won't be able to. But if it was completely metal all the way through, you can just take it and put it directly into the oven and not have to worry about that. So once you have your sort of cooking vessel, you need something to actually cook on. So you can use pretty much anything that gets hot. If you have a stove, regardless if it's electric or gas. That's ideal. Maybe you're in a situation where you don't and you have something like a hot plate, and that's fine too, but you have to know how hot it gets and what kind of temperature. And that's really the most important thing when it comes to cooking, is sort of the temperature, the ability, like how hot it can get, and then the control of it. So how precise you can adjust your temperature. And part of that is there's a bit of a learning process there to figure out how your specific stove or cooking top sort of works. So now I'm going to show you just sort of some of the basic techniques for actually cutting. And of course you got to be careful when you're preparing your food, especially when you have a nice sharp knife. It's going to make cutting things a lot easier, but it also increases the risk, of course, of cutting yourself. And little nicks and things may happen, but if you have good technique, start slow, take your time and build it up, and that's going to help a lot, not only so you prepare your food faster, but also at a much lower risk, of course, of potentially injuring yourself, right? So like I said, I prefer a bigger knife, generally speaking. When you go to hold the knife, you want to hold it in a way that's very balanced. So a higher quality knife will be more balanced for the weight. So usually what you want to do is you want to hold your knife like this. So you have your index finger kind of over here, your thumb's over top of the middle, and this gives you a good balance on the blade. Now when you're preparing your food, what you want to do is pull your fingers back and have your knuckles push forward a bit. And the reason for that is when you put your blade up here, there's no risk of cutting your fingers. And when you usually go, you kind of want to do it in a rocking motion. So kind of like this. So imagine I had something here, some food, you put it here, kind of push it forward, you pull your fingers back, you start here, you cut up, and you slowly bring your stuff in with this kind of rocking motion. You pull your hand back, you push it forward more. Or you can also move the blade in, but that's usually not as good of an option, right? And then when you get to the end piece, if you can't hold it, you can just kind of push it like this from the back end and just do the rest of it. But this way, you see, when you cut, there's no chance of you cutting yourself because your fingers, right, your fingers are tucked in. And once you have your tools and you're using them, the next piece is taking care of them. So for a knife, a good knife, you need to actually sharpen it every once in a while, and there's different tools you can use for that. So the traditional method is using basically like a sharpening stone. The thing about a sharpening stone is that there's a very specific skill required to it, and it can take quite a while to get good at that skill. And if you don't do it right, you can actually dull the blade more or even damage, scratch up the steel on the knife. The other option is there's these automated sharpening tools these days that you can get on Amazon or in kitchen supply places. They're more expensive than a sharpening stone, but they kind of take out the learning a whole other skill set. You basically just plug it in, you turn it on, and what happens is there's little grinding discs basically inside of here that are different coarseness, and they just constantly turn. So you just put the knife in and you pull it across a number of times on each side, and this is like the coarsest one. So if your knife is really dull, this will actually take off a little more of the steel and create an edge. This one will sharpen or refine the edge. And then this is a manual one here. So when you're done these two, you turn it off, and then you use the manual one basically as like the finisher or the finale to help fine tune the edge. So it's a good way to keep your knife sharp. And then with cutting boards, you can get cutting board oil, and basically when the wood starts to dry out, and actually I need to apply some oil to this one soon, but what you do is you just put it on, you smooth it across, and you let the oil soak in, and it helps moisturize the wood and keep it in a good spot. Besides that, for frying pans and that kind of thing, you just keep them clean. Try not to scratch them up too much. You don't have to worry about that too much with stainless steel. If you're using cast iron, you got to be a little more careful because they're seasoned. And if you take off that seasoning, your food's going to stick a lot. So you have to be more careful how you clean those. It's the same kind of thing with like non-stick pans. You can't really scrub them super hard. You got to make sure that you're using something to wash them that's more gentle. So stainless steel is kind of the most versatile out of the bunch, but you still obviously want to be careful with it as well. So finally, when you go to cook, I would suggest definitely starting with recipe. As you gain more experience cooking, you're going to be able to start figuring out ways to modify those recipes or change things, different flavor combinations that work, that you enjoy. And as you start to memorize or just, certain techniques from doing certain things enough times, you'll be able to just make things, sort of off the cuff without actually having to follow anything. But there's no shame in following recipes, and there's a ton of recipes out there and great sites, and it's a great way to get started. So before you go to cook, make sure you find yourself a good recipe and do the preparation. It's one of the most important pieces, I think, of cooking, is you need to do your preparation first, because once, your food's actually over the heat, sometimes you don't have the time to do extra things, right? So especially when you're first starting, before you start to get more comfortable with the timing of things, what you want to do is try to prepare as much of the stuff ahead of time as possible. So obviously if you need to marinate your meat, so like soak it in some kind of sauce to help break the meat down and make it more tender, or to add flavor, do that first. If you have vegetables you need to cut up or whatever, get those cut up, get them prepared and ready to go. Get your pan ready. If it needs oil, get oil and stuff into it, get all that stuff set up. Even with sauces, if there's sauces that are required during the cooking process, whether it's spices or a sauce you have to make, prepare that ahead of time, get it ready. And then that way, once you get started and you're going through the process, everything's ready. And you're not scrambling to try to make sure you don't burn your food while you're also still doing some of that prep work, right? So get all the preparation done ahead of time. And that's gonna help make your cooking experience, a whole lot smoother. So I hope this video has been helpful and it's given some insights on how to cook a little bit on the basics. I might try to do some more advanced videos down the road and actually take you through like a full meal preparation and something that I cook and do. But I really just wanted to start with an intro and let people know, it's not extremely scary or horribly difficult. It just takes a little bit of preparation, some time, and a few sort of basic tools to get started. And like I said, cooking I think is an extremely important skill. So please, go cook your first meal, see what you think, and hey, if you cook something and you want to leave some comments down below of what you tried to cook and what your experience was like, that would be awesome. As always, please like and subscribe if you're a fan of this video, if you're a fan of this channel. It helps you get out there, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for tuning in. The Average Guy signing out for now. Until next time.